you know what? I'd rather be happy than being right. That is, it's like your body says, okay. Hi, everyone. I am super excited to have MJ Renshaw. I hope I didn't chop your name in the show because we are going to talk about something that is very, very juicy. And for many years, I thought that doing it was a sign of weakness. And I'm talking about crying. Before we even get into the juicy stuff, MJ, I would like you to please share a little bit about your journey and your life and what inspired you to write this book with my audience.
Well, thank you. So similar. I thought showing emotion was a sign of weakness. I grew up kind of in a home environment where I would say toxic masculine energy was revered. So very, very masculine, don't show any emotion. And I won't say stoicism because we know in stoicism you're allowed to cry. It wasn't crying and showing emotion was not accepted. I want to say tricky, but I'll just say horrible upbringing. I struggled with a parent who had addiction issues, a lot of violence in my home. I was sexually abused when I was 4. My dad ended up committing suicide. My big brother died in a car accident, and all of that happened before I was 22. So it was a lot. I remember being young and just thinking, like, is this what life is? Like, this feels really terrible. And looking around me and seeing that my friends weren't really experiencing things like that. They still had a family and they weren't experiencing sexual trauma. So I had my own philosophical wrestling to do with a higher power or God or energy, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And I went on a pretty big healing journey and a pretty big spiritual journey of just figuring out what do I want to do with all of this. And I dropped out of school for osteopathy. I started my own business. I've had it for about 4 or 5 years now. It's gone really well. We've done 7 figures. I wrote a book. It was a bestseller. And my whole mission has just been to help people come the realization that I also came to, which is just that showing your emotions and feeling your emotions is a really good thing, not just energetically, but also physiologically. Like we have all the studies that show that when you suppress emotions, it's extremely bad for your relationships, for your health, for your career. Yet somehow society still thinks that if you show emotions, you're weak. So I'm kind of here to push back against that stigma or against that culture. I'm going to sound a little bit intense here, but that culture of saying that crying is weak is killing us. So I'm here to push back against it.
And I love that because I also, for many years, we were talking a little before the show, and I also, for many years, thought that being vulnerable was being weak. And even my parenting changed when I started to show up vulnerable. My kids saw me crying for the first time. I think my daughter was 11 years old because I would go in the shower, curl myself, and cry by myself because I'm so strong that I am not going to show up weak in front of my kids, especially as a single mom. And I didn't understand why I was getting cancer 3 times, why my body was shutting off, why I was getting pernicious anemia, why I was getting all these illnesses. And I never really put 2 and 2 together until I went to an emotional intelligence training and I started to see my commonality with other people. And then I'm like, wait a minute, maybe this has something to do with me not crying, not allowing myself to cry. And I do remember when I was a kid that my mom even will say to me, not a tear or just 1 tear or stop crying. And I'm like, why stop crying? And then I start getting more curious. And one thing that you just said right now is that the emotional suppression affect our life, but it also affect our aging, correct? How?
Definitely. So, I mean, just to boil it down to really basic physiology, every single time you suppress an emotion, and I'm talking any emotion, anger, shame, sadness, grief, joy, right? If you're going to suppress emotions, if you want to go your life without crying, you're not going to feel sadness, you're also suppressing joy because you can't selectively. You're either feeling or you're not. You either are enjoying life and feeling all of it or you're not. So we can't just selectively block out one emotion. And every time you do decide to block an emotion, you create cortisol in your body. It's estimated that when you stop yourself from crying, you go to cry and you stop yourself in that moment, you increase your cortisol by 30%. So we know that, if we want to talk about longevity and we want to talk about aging, whether we're looking at the health of your actual heart organ or your skin, the superficial stuff, and I don't mean superficial derogatory, I just mean the outside, you don't want to have cortisol in your body. You want to be calm. You want to be relaxed. That's what allows for health. That's what allows for repair. Every single woman in my life who is radiant at 60, 70, 80, they are relaxed women. So that requires us to feel our anger,
To feel our feelings.
feel your feelings. The irony of it is we think that if we open the floodgates, it's going to be pure chaos. But in reality, I think it's studied that we would only, I can't remember if it's a minute or 90 seconds, but that's how long you'll feel the emotion for. If you completely open up and just say, surrender, I'm going to feel this emotion. You'll feel it for that long. I think grief is a little bit different.
Right, because it has stages and they
Yes,
come
exactly.
back.
It's a lot. Grief is a lot. I
Mhm.
think I'm someone who's grieved a lot and I'm still grieving and it changes, but it doesn't, I don't know if it goes away. You just live with it. I say in the book that grief, once you really let yourself grieve someone, you realize that what it actually is love. When you allow yourself to really cry for someone who you've lost, what you're expressing is your love for that person.
Right.
One of my pet peeves is how recently in society we want to have celebrations of life. And I always think like, are we denying people grief by doing that? I don't want to celebrate the loss of someone. I want to feel it. But that's just my own side note.
When my ex-husband passed away, we did a celebration of life because that was the title, but it did help my daughters see how many people love their dad. I think that's a title that maybe we need to change that title and just celebrate the person and remember the person and allow ourselves to grieve and feel sad for the absence of that person. I don't have plans for when I pass. My kids, when I die, they will end up with no parents. I don't have like any arrangements because I don't really believe in being stuck in a place and forcing people to go see you there. I think that my energy will be around my daughters anywhere they are. But I did say to them that I wanted them to have some sort of reunion because I also wanted them to feel the love that people had for me for them and then share that sadness and not hold it back or not trying to masquerade it with anything but really feel, you know what, this person is sad and I am sad too, and let's be sad together.
Yeah, we're going on a different direction. But yes, I think that there's a lot of collective trauma that we have because we don't properly process the ending of a human life together. And I think that there could be a lot of healing on the planet. I love the idea of death doulas, having someone come in and facilitate ceremony around the loss of a person and just really helping people dive deeper into that. What does that mean? How can I really helping them guide people into saying the last thing that they want to say or helping people make that last connection? I know there's so many people who just miss out on those moments because it takes a certain amount of facing your fear or facing your shame, and they can be life-changing, coming together, like you're saying, and holding each other in that sadness. I lost my big brother when he was 18 and I was 14, and it shattered my family. My dad relapsed and started doing fentanyl. My mom and I didn't really connect for a long time because we didn't even know she was grieving so much, and so was I. I always felt like my parents just forgot that I even existed. They were so in their own grief, and it could have been so different. We had a different mindset with grief or sadness. We could have come together and helped each other, but it wasn't available to us at that time.
And it's also the perception, right? You just said you felt like you didn't exist, and maybe what they were trying to do is not affect you with their own emotions. But when you don't have that communication, and that's something that kind of like rolling back into your book, I want to bring up intimacy. What's intimacy and why relationships are so important to be healthy? Right? We talk about the blue zones, for example, and for years we thought that if what they're eating, how many times in the day they are in the sun, or how they do things during the day. And I think these people are living longer because they are in a tribe. They
Yes.
have a tribe. And that's the lifestyle. I have it always in my show. We can only fly if we embrace each other. That's the only way. And until we don't understand that, I think people are going to start continue living to a certain age and then dying looking at their phones.
Yeah, we have the studies to show, right? Our relationships are the most important things in our life. The Harvard study, I think it's 80 years long now, where they're looking at people who are their last few breaths, and across the board, they're saying the most important thing in their life to them was their relationships. But how many 30, 40-year-olds do you meet who are saying, I'm just really focusing on my relationships right now? That's been a big shift for me. You start a family, you start a career, you got all these goals, and then you turn around and you realize I don't really have any friends.
That's true,
But
especially when we get older. When we're younger, we have a lot of friends. And then we start getting older, we start focusing on other things. And maybe it's because our priorities change or our vision for our life change, our alignment change. But still, we can find other people that will be aligned with who we are in that moment, but we don't.
yeah, yeah, or even just be, I live in a small town in Canada. I've had to be more open-minded just in terms of who I'm going to connect with and who's available. I live in on a street. We are right by the lake. It's gorgeous. A lot of retired people. There's a lot of people here who vote differently than me. They have different opinions on things than I do. Maybe they don't believe in breath work, but I can still connect with them. And I know that's maybe a little bit controversial to say. I have my personal beliefs and my moral compass, and it is quite strong. However, I've just come to a place where I realize that if I want to change someone's mind, or if I want to help someone see something the way that I see it, I'm not going to get there by fighting them. I'm
True.
going to get there by connecting with them and listening to them. And
Mhm.
it's been that shift has been really helpful for me, not just selfishly, just in terms of like connecting with other people, right? I had two back-to-back babies postpartum. They're only 2 and 3 now, so not a lot of leaving the house. I'm not going far. My friends live far. So the closest thing I have is a 77-year-old man that lives across the street. And he's very different than me, but we have connected. So I think for me, it's just been opening my mind to people and seeing them as, I think everybody's got a good heart, but we've all, and this goes again back to the book where I see a lot of people who have beliefs that might be not be as loving as having emotional intelligence issues.
They don't know how to deliver.
Exactly. Exactly. Or they don't know how to feel.
That is for sure. But then again, they put their foot in their mouth and they're trying to say something. And it's like, listen, I tell you a very simple example. The other day, my husband goes to my housekeeper and he says, there is no more water in the fridge. And my housekeeper received it as, did you drink all the water in the fridge? So this woman is mortified that I'm just going to bring my bottles of water. And I had to explain to her because of course English is not her first language. So she translated literally and in her head, that's what she received. And oftentimes that's what happened. We say something and the other person receive it totally different because they are in a different place emotionally. And you're like, wait a minute, why are you barking at me? I'll just ask you a simple question. So you're 100% right. It's meet the person where they are and have your agenda on the side. Just be open to get to know. You cannot hate anybody if you know their story.
This is true.
You're gonna find something in common with that person at some point, and that could be the beginning of a beautiful relationship.
That's just been so true. I think you brought up something so interesting. I think there's so many issues could be resolved if we were to check what someone meant when they said something.
What did you hear me say?
So this is what I heard. Is this what you actually said? And then
Mhm.
they would be like, oh, no, no, that's not what I said at all. It's hard. Language is so limiting.
And it affects us our nerve system, right? And also one thing, going back to your book, one thing that you talk about is that your nerve system and your skin develop at the same time. I didn't know that. Like I was like, wait, what? So then you said that your nervous system is your report card of your skin,
Yeah.
correct?
So we develop embryologically in layers, and our nervous system and our skin are the ectoderm. They're the ectoderm layer when
Mhm.
we develop. So it's a great organ to look at when we have nervous system problems. I've never met a single person with eczema, psoriasis, rosacea. So much of that was tied to my stress in my nervous system. They
Wow.
are direct report cards of how you're feeling.
Right. And you know what is so true? How many times you are in a stressful period of time and you get a pimple? And you're like, I never get pimples, but I get a pimple. Or you got something in your lip, or you got something somewhere, and you're
Hmm.
like, okay, this thing has a name and a last name. Okay. Because this is what is making me feel this way. But in the
Hmm.
same token, we get to choose our emotions every day when we wake up. So what kind of a day you're gonna have? What are you gonna allow other people to say and how those things are gonna affect you? So it's not just receive, receive, receive. And sometimes we forget that we have that power to say,
Yeah, it's such a good point. So all the studies show that it's perceived stress,
"Mm,
not actual stress, right? We can have two different people go to Vietnam War and come back with very different experiences of it. One person might have PTSD and one person might not. So it's not the external event, it's our perception of it. I think it's almost as like I don't want to push toxic positivity, but I also don't want to push like toxic complaining about your life all the time. I think there is a happy medium in feeling something that's going on. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling really stressed out in that moment, but you just don't want those complaints to become the habit of your life. In the book, I always explain when we're in a very calm nervous system state, I think the human baseline emotion is just joy. And then we will dip into these other emotions and other stressful states because we're human, and that's what we will do forever. There's never going to be another human on this planet who won't feel sadness or anger. Don't suppress it, don't hold on to it, just feel it and let it float away, and you can go back to baseline.
and it's also something you just said right now is I feel sad or I feel angry instead of I am sad and I am angry. How we talk to ourselves is so important. I used to tease my kids when they were little and I would say things, why are you acting like, or why would you are behaving like I would not label them. I would label the behavior so they could recognize the behavior. I wanted to ask you before we move from here and the feelings and everything, when did you realize that letting yourself cry, letting your emotions show up actually happened for you, that it wasn't a weakness, that I am just going to allow myself to feel? What happened in your life in that moment when you said, well, wait a minute, I need to start doing this?
Yeah, I had lost my brother and then I went away to university. And after that loss, I just completely shut down. Like, I don't remember really connecting with people or talking to people. I don't even remember much of my life at that time. And I had a moment at a party where someone put on a record and it reminded me so much of him. And I went up in the bathroom and I just started bawling, like full on ugly cry. And my boyfriend at the time kept being like, "Are you okay?" And I just remember looking up to him and going, "This is the best I've felt in a really long time." And I even remember leaving that party. We stayed there all night. When you're 19, 20, you do these things.
Right. And
We
you have
left
the
at,
energy.
yeah, we left at dawn. And him and I, we lived in Montreal. We walked back through the McGill campus together and just everything seemed alive. Like it was like someone had turned on my life again.
Wow.
And I felt so at peace. And I was like, okay, I'm a big believer in following your body, like following your nervous system. How does my body feel in this situation? How does my body feel in that situation?
Mhm.
And I just remember being like, okay, noted. I have to cry more. I am so shut down. And it's just been sort of a progression since there.
So, what do you think is a piece of conditioning around crying that you decide to break? I'm not doing this anymore.
Definitely. Yeah, it was programmed into me. I mean, I come from a household where if you cried, you were labeled dramatic, too sensitive, you go to your room. Like there wasn't a lot of holding space of like this is just emotional intelligence. And it's not
Right.
my parents' fault. You look at my grandparents and my great grandparents and my great 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 grandparents, like no one had it, no one was taught it. So it's just been generation after generation of saying, I'm not comfortable with your emotions. I'm also not comfortable with my own. So what we're going to do is we're just going to avoid those things.
Right.
I have kids now, and you're a parent. When you become a parent, your instinct in parenting is to parent the way you were parented. And the hard part about parenting is trying not to do that in the ways that were harmful. So I'm a parent now. I have mantras when my kids are breaking down and just saying, it's okay to cry, let it out. It's okay to be sad. You can be angry. I've got a 2-year-old son, so we say in the house a lot, it's okay to be upset and mad. You're not allowed to hit. It's not permissive to allow someone to work through their feelings. And I would say that it's extremely healthy. And I think dipping into something that's a little bit unique, but because I've been on a few podcasts lately with men, I would say it's almost especially important for men right now because we have 75% of suicides are men. Young men are really struggling. There was a survey that came out in 2024 where I think it was 19 to 24 that were the ages. 2/3 of them said they felt like no one knew them. So we have a huge loneliness epidemic with men. And yes, there are more things that they could do about it. I know it gets criticized a lot, but at the end of the day, they're emotionally unintelligent. And that's
Yeah,
fixable. That is totally fixable.
totally flexible. And I agree with you. And I think also the conditioning they have of not being vulnerable, not being emotional, not being in their feminine energy stop them from getting curious. I wanted to ask you, what would you say, or how do you explain to someone that is skeptical about what we're talking about, that there is a real physiological and emotional benefit in allowing themselves to feel and eventually to cry?
I would just show them the studies that we have on disease. So there's a whole branch of medicine called psychoneuroimmunology. We now know that if you suppress anger, sadness, grief, you're more likely to have heart disease, autoimmune conditions, chronic inflammation, cancer. You're more likely to struggle with mental health issues. You're more likely to have an addiction. So what I just named are pretty much the top killers in the United States. You take away motor vehicle accidents and that's it. So I'm not saying that everyone who has that has an emotional problem. I don't know. We don't have a study for that. But I am saying that we do have studies that show when you suppress your emotions, you're more likely to XYZ. We also have studies that show that things like loneliness are the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Why are people lonely? They're emotionally unintelligent. And why are they emotionally unintelligent? They don't know how to express their emotions to another person, and they don't know how to hold space for someone else to have theirs. It is a ridiculously simple problem and with a simple solution.
Because it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, they just don't want to feel,
Exactly.
even
It's
though
like, you know
feeling
what,
takes
you're gonna
90
everything is
seconds.
gonna be okay. Even when sometimes I hear, and this come more from men, you go to a man with, let's call it a problem, okay? Whatever it is that you're going through. Either they're trying to fix it or they tell you it's gonna be okay. But that middle place where is tell me more. How are you feeling? And not because I want you to fix it, just because I want to be heard. I want to be seen. I want you to meet me where I am. That part is missing, and it's missing in a lot of relationships. I coach women, and that's the biggest complaint. I had women that come to me about to get divorced. And once they learn to communicate and enroll their partners into, see me, I'm not asking you to fix it. I just want you to listen to me so you can understand why I've been tearing for the last 48 hours. And they don't know sometimes, as women, we don't know sometimes how to communicate that. And the man doesn't get curious. So the answer is, what do I need to do to fix this? Or it's going to be fine. You're going to be fine. It's fine. You're fine. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You're going to be fine. And that's the end of the conversation. And that brings me back to that intimacy. If you're not open to receive, you're not going to receive information, whatever it is that you're asking for.
And then the men are always like, why don't you want to have sex with me?
Because I don't have that switch. It doesn't
No,
work
it's
that
because for
way.
us, I see this with my friends and with my own marriage. I want intimacy. And to men, they're
Exactly.
like, we kiss all the time. And it's like, no, I want you to bare your soul to me, and I want to bare my soul to you.
Right.
And then that facilitates the emotional safety that most women need to
Mhm.
really be intimate.
And you remind me of my daughter. One of my daughters is married. My kids has been exposed to emotional intelligence since they're very little. So they have no problem expressing themselves. And my daughter will go to her husband and say, we need to talk because I am feeling this, and that. And then he will interrupt sometimes and say, well, I feel like that. And she goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is not your time to tell me how you feel. This is my time to tell you how I feel. And men always do that. It's tit for tat. I feel tired. I feel tired too. I didn't have a good night's sleep. I feel a little down. I've been feeling like that too. No, listen. Be quiet and listen. You want to get to know me? You want to get to understand where I am, why I'm shutting down? Listen. And they don't do that. It's like they're wired to just fix. I'm a hunter. I'm going to go get the meat and then we're going to eat and we're going to be okay for years and years and years and years. It's crazy to me. What is a small practical first step they can take to safely start feeling and maybe even crying?
Obviously going to say breath work. That's kind of my gateway, but there's so many tools out there. So on my app, we've got a free breathwork recording. We've got a whole section of free breathwork, but there's a free recording called Emotional Clearing. We can put it in the show notes maybe for
I
people to
will.
join. It's a
Yeah.
great breathwork. I get DMs and emails about it all the time of people being like, wow, like I was shut down and now I'm feeling it, or I didn't even know I was storing that. That's a great way. Other ways are what movie? Use art. Art is there to express emotion. That's what it's there for. It's so beautiful. Is there a painting that just hits you in a right way? Is there a song that you could put on and it would remind you of someone you lost or remind you of an emotion that you just are a little bit scared to touch the edges of? Is there a movie? I know if I watch Interstellar or if I watch Marley and Me with the dog, like I cannot not cry at those movies. And that's what Aristotle fought Plato for. He said art is important. It's a part of society. We need it to reflect back to ourselves what we're feeling inside. So even all those years ago in Greece, they knew it was a tool to express emotion.
Breathing also, you have said it in a different interview, that the way we take breathing for granted. We breathe every day and there is no technique to it, but I guess there is, right? It's like a 5 second or 6 second that would give so many benefits to your body when you do it the right way, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've been teaching breathwork for a really long time. Part of that looks like when you sit down and you do a breathwork technique or a breathwork practice in a certain moment to evoke a certain feeling or to evoke feeling calm, whatever your goals are. But a big part of it is just how do you breathe day to day? Are you breathing through your nose or through your mouth? Are you breathing, how many breaths do you take per minute? We know now, we have the studies that show if someone's taking 24 breaths per minute plus, their likelihood of having a heart attack extremely soon is extremely high. But if you go to the doctor, they don't test that metric. So the respiratory system is highly underlooked and highly underdeveloped for a lot of people. Another thing that I like to explain is the number one metric for longevity. So if you want to figure out how long is this person going to live, it's doing a VO2 max test. And it's pretty involved. Like you're on a treadmill, you're running, you've got a big mask on your face. But essentially what they're testing is how well your cells, or more correctly, the mitochondria in your cells, how well do they use oxygen to create energy? It's an amazing test. I've done
I've
it.
heard about it.
It is the best report card you can get for your longevity, period. They know that it is the most important marker. Again, you're never going to see that in a doctor's office. However, it's a good hint to us that the way you breathe is pretty important if the test involves your respiratory system for longevity. I mean, just to summarize it and really simplify it for people, I always say 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out through your nose only.
Why? What's the difference?
Between nasal breathing and mouth breathing, our mouth is not designed for breathing.
Really?
You are
And when
not
we
supposed
get
to breathe.
tired, that's the first thing we try to do. Or when somebody's drowning, that's the first thing they try to do is like breathe through their
Yes. Well,
mouth.
yes, absolutely. But like the mouth is just there as a backup, right? It's designed so elegantly so that if you get a stuffy nose, you still got a way to breathe. Breathing through your mouth is better than not breathing at all.
Right. True.
But it's not designed for it. So the way we have our sinuses and our nasal passageways, it is so beautiful. It takes the air in, it conditions it. We've got so much lymphatic tissue out there. So if there's viruses or bacteria in that air, you're going to filter them out so they're not going straight into your lungs. Here's all the things that happen for people who breathe through their mouth. They typically have their tonsils out. They almost always have sinus issues, sinus infections all the time. They get sick a lot. It changes the entire structure of your face. They tend to have more narrow jaw, more narrow, underdeveloped face, an underdeveloped chin, dark circles under the eyes. You're more likely to get sleep apnea. It goes so far beyond just like you're going to get sick a lot. Every time you breathe through your mouth, you're signaling to your sympathetic nervous system to turn on. So it creates anxiety for your body. which then creates more hyperventilation of your breathing. So you're breathing shallow. It's an awful way to live. If anyone's listening and they mouth breathe, just get really adamant about training yourself to breathe through your nose. And if you're sitting there being like, but I have this and I have that and I have this, listen to the book, The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McEwen. He had the deviated septum. He had all the problems. He went deep into the research, realized that mouth breathing is terrible. It's an amazing book. He's big in the breathwork world. You will read it and come out the other end. I promise you, practicing nasal breathing, but it's life-changing.
I didn't know that so much is involved in that.
I could
Hear
go
you.
even deeper. So people who get cavities a lot, your oral health, now we have studies that show that the certain bacteria in your mouth will show us whether you're going to get Alzheimer's, you're going to get heart disease. Like it's amazing that we aren't looking at this more in the world of wellness.
I think our body is such an amazing machine, for lack of a better word. And it's like when you get a new phone, you don't really investigate all the apps that comes with the phone, right? So we don't do the same thing with our body. We just assume that my mouth is for this and my nose is for this and my eyes are to look and that's that. And we don't go deeper in really finding out all the other perks that you get with this amazing body that we have.
Yes, I had a man making fun of me in my comments the other day, teaching people how to breathe. What's next? Teaching them how to walk. And I was just like, do you not realize that people have respiratory diseases?
Ignorance is bliss. I mean, if I could only share the things that people say to me when I talk about inner abundance, is that going to pay my bills? No, but you're probably going to start attracting different things if you're in the right vibration because you're happier with yourself. But if you don't want to dig in a little deeper, you're never going to learn these things. So you're still gonna have 9 to 5 and you're going to kill yourself in the
Yeah.
process
I
eating
listened
the wrong
to,
food.
who was the woman who wrote The Secret?
Oh God, you asking the wrong person. I
No,
don't
she's
have her
she's
name.
so loved, but also so hated because people
Mhm.
don't like the idea of manifesting your dream life. And I remember the interviewer was saying, what do you have to say to these people that say, this is BS or this can't be real?
Mhm.
She just so calmly said, if they don't want the kind of life that they could have, that's fine. And it's so freeing to think like that. Like, okay, if you want to mouth breathe or if you want to work a job that you don't like or be in a relationship that doesn't feel in alignment for you, like that's okay. Like you don't have to like what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. It's fine.
That's true. What would you like the readers to take away from your book?
There's a level of aliveness that comes with feeling your emotions that I think a lot of people look for in external things that they could find just by going within and really feeling life.
That's abundance for me. That's the definition of abundance for me. And it took me many, many years to understand that everything I needed was within myself. The rest were just circumstances.
It's so true. Because you think, what are all the things you want? I want a new car. I want to go on a vacation.
Mm.
I want this kind of man. Why do you want those things? Because
Oh, you make
you want to feel something and you can feel that way right now. Like you can literally picture the Range Rover. What's the feeling you get? You feel important. You feel loved. You feel luxury.
Mhm.
You can feel that right now.
You get an expensive watch. Exactly. When I do retreats, and once a year I do a vision board retreat with manifesting, and I always tell my guests and my clients that come to my retreat to write an emotion next to what they want because it's not the thing that you want, it's how that thing makes you feel. And we forget that. So we start accumulating things and we're still feeling it. So.
Hmm.
This was so enlightening. I love it. I want to ask you, this is going to be like a crazy question, but the last thing that made you laugh before you cry, do you remember that? Because
Until I
I
cry.
feel that laughing and crying have a lot in common.
Oh, I can definitely share.
Go ahead.
We had our small town fair come to our small town. And just for backstory, we've got a 2-year-old son. He is hilarious, like so funny. And we've got a puppy, and they're inseparable. But my son has this weird habit of he'll pull down his pants in front of the puppy and go, lick my bum. And the dog will lick his butt. Disgusting. But we can't, it's just what they do. Like we try to stop it. But of course, with kids, if you like grab onto you just kind of have to ignore it until it goes away. So we're at this fair and we walked into a tent and all these little kids were there with their dogs. And I said to my husband, I was like, we should get Bowie up there doing his special trick. And my husband and I were just like in stitches, picturing our son going up there, like my bum. All
And
these
you
dogs are
love
like
that
doing these amazing
authenticity.
tricks. I feel like, I mean, that's the beauty of kids is they're so chaotic, but like there isn't a day goes by where I'm not in stitches laughing because little kids are so funny. They're
Because they're
hilarious.
authentic. They don't have
They
an
are
agenda.
so
They
authentic.
are just there. And that's like now that our kids are older and the grandkids are gonna start coming and everything, I think that part of me of a mom that I was like so concentrated in raising them right or whatever, kind of is gonna be pushed to the side and I'm gonna really enjoy all the foolishness or however you say it of having these little kids showing you the world under a different glass.
Mhm.
And that is so beautiful. And I love that you're enjoying that so much. What would you tell your younger self, or what is your superpower? I'm gonna ask you, what would you tell your younger self? Because your life now is so much different than what it was when you were a kid, and you now know who you are and you like who you are. And we have a lot of things in common when it comes to our upbringing. So I'm curious to hear you. What would you say to your younger self if you go back in time?
I would just say, don't let it change you. Don't close your heart. I remember being a kid and I felt the way I do kind of now, where the world is just magical and there's so many possibilities out there and people are amazing. And there was a time where I stopped feeling that way. I let the things that happened around me kind of affect the way I viewed the world and the way I viewed people. Of course, I understand there's horrible things happening in the world and there are people who are making bad choices all the time, but I want my consciousness to go in the direction that I want the world to go in.
Yeah,
So I want to hold the highest possible vibration for the planet, the highest possible outcome of good. That's what I want. And I think the rest will follow. And I can hope only that with my business and with my book that I help more people do that.
beautiful. The book is called How to Cry. It's available in Amazon. I'm gonna have all your links and everything in the description of the show. And I thank you so much for being in my show. I love that you chose not to shrink to fit. I love that you share in your light, and I enjoy very much our conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me.